Anytime you are ready.
Okay, Scott, you can hear me, right? Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, August 18, 2015 Special Council Meeting. Number 2, approval of agenda. Anybody care to move the approval of the agenda? So moved. No additions? No? Okay. Second, moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Contrary? Carried. Conflict of interest declaration. Anybody have a conflict around the table? Having heard none, we will move to number 3, other business and for decision. 3A, capital investment plan. We have an attachment, and also, I guess, we've supplied with a whole bunch of pages here. CA Muse, I'm sure this is yours.
It is. So this was distributed a while back via email, and what you have in front of you is a paper copy of the 5-year plan. It has been changed since the original, and so the only change is on, there's no additional projects added. What has changed was the how one of the projects was funded, and so I'll get into that on the executive summary, which is actually attached on. It's actually easier to read. What you have in front of you is very detailed. It explains exactly where the money comes from and is going. And so in some of the projects that are multi-year, it's difficult to follow on that spreadsheet. So that's why I prepared the summary, which shows each of the projects, how much we estimate the cost is going to be, and where the money is coming from, regardless of when it's actually going to be executed. Okay. So I will focus mostly on what's attached on the agenda. What you have in front of you, however, is what I'll be asking you to either modify and or approve today, which is the plan that goes to the province of Nova Scotia. That's their template. And inside of that, you'll see all of the projects are ranked by priority. And so we can certainly have a discussion around that. I'm just trying to help you through this because there's quite a few layers to it. Certainly the priority the scoring was prepared by myself. So certainly, open for question and debate and change. What you'll see is just because a project is ranked number 1 in importance, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily the first thing to be done. So sometimes what happens is a smaller project, because the money is secured, will come ahead. So what you'll find on that is like the Wedgeport wastewater project is number 1. Well, that's been established for more than 24 months now, and so that project is still in the pre-planning stage, and because we had to re-examine that project entirely, as you're aware. We're looking at a non-centralized option, and so we're working with Richemont to get that plan going. That's going to take a while to get going, so we can't, even if it's number 1, we can't execute the project quicker than the other projects that are on that list. So that's the logic of that. Okay, so what it means is we will be working hard on it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the execution of the project will happen first. Okay, back up a little bit. The list that I have in front, that you all have in front of you, and now I'm coming back to the summary page because it's easier to read and follow. That is the list of the projects that have been considered by council up until now to be a priority. So Wedgeport wastewater, tennis court retrofits, Comfit wind, maintenance equipment, which is truck and trailer, things that you've already approved in this year's current budget. Tusket wastewater, West Pumnico wastewater, minor retrofits in those 2 areas. Dominion Textiles demolition is on this list. Even if it's not our project, it requires funding from us, so I put it here. Municipal Administration Building is on this list. Yellowbrook Fire Department, again, not our project, but requires funding from us. Track and field, artificial surface, Yarmouth Airport, runway, that's 2 runways, and again, not our project, but may require funding from us, certainly requires support from us. East Kempville Community Center, this was a motion this year, I think it was February, that we had that this council made a decision to add that to the list, so it's now showing. And the new ferry terminal, which again is not our project, and based on the information highlighted there, lots has to happen before that actually becomes a reality. So that's the list, and so I guess, you know, a couple of things that I'd like from council. One is, you know, an understanding that this is in fact the list. I'd like for you to consider whether or not it's a complete list, or whether something should come off. Again, we look at this every year, even if it's a 5-year plan, we look at it every year. And any other questions around cost and where we're getting the money, I'm happy to answer. Some of these projects are conditional on funding, and that's not always clear in the report. So if you had any questions about which project doesn't happen if we don't get the money, I'm happy to answer those questions also. And then on the bottom of that summary, what you'll find is just a quick and dirty, here's what our reserves are, right? Because, I mean, the question invariably is, well, we can prioritize projects all we want, but if the money isn't there, then it's kind of a useless exercise. So this is a very quick and dirty, you know, here's the accumulated surpluses in each of the funds that we're expecting the money to come out of. And here's, you know, here's the revenues that are expected to come in, like, and here's the estimated surpluses at the end of the year for each of those funds. So that, there has been a change on that I will explain. The municipal administration building initially had an allocation of $700,000 of federal gas tax. That has been reduced to $200,000. And that was based on information I received this morning.
Wow.
So that has been changed. So what that essentially means on that particular project is it is extremely unlikely that a new building would attract a significant amount of gas tax support based on the new agreement. That basically was a door that was open for a very short period of time, and that is since closed. So I think only one municipality took advantage of that. So with the new agreement, the government is basically saying on a retrofit, if you're doing a retrofit and there are components of the retrofit that would fall under an eligibility criteria, you may qualify, but not on new. So it's the opposite of what we had been advising you before. So that changes things a little bit around how we interpret that project.
That's very back to the drawing board.
It's, in terms of revenue, yes. In terms of expense, well, no, because if one costs, you know, more than the other, or if you look at life cycle and one is a better deal on the expense side than the other, then the revenue source may be irrelevant in terms of the right decision. What the shame of it is that we can't actually use that fund to offset that project, which was a real opportunity we felt at the time that really changed things for us when we looked at that. So in terms of decision making, yeah, it might be, but we're still waiting for information from our engineers around retrofit. So I'm not sure why there is such an undue delay. But anyway, so that's just one project. So that's the summary. So I'll stop there and ask if there are any questions or if there's debate or discussion on that.
Yep, there is a couple of lights on anyway. Councilor Surratt, you had your,
Right on. A couple of questions. And this is just maybe I'm missing the boat here on the East Kentville Community Center. The 50,000, is that if that's the cost of the total project?
No, that would be our component of that
Oh,
cost.
that was our component. That was on extension on the fire hall, if I remember.
It's a community center built on the fire.
Ah, that's what it is. Thank you, Danny. Right on. Very good. That's question one. Question two, Comfit, is that, well, that's still up in the air, right, on the Comfit?
literally.
No pun intended. Yeah, the location, I believe that they're working on a new location. I don't have the information. I heard through the grapevine that they may have alternate locations,
Yeah.
but that's the extent of what I know at this time.
But I think,
But the project is not dead.
but hasn't the province stopped funding confits for now?
Yes,
Did
yes,
they
they
give
have.
us a timeline, or?
Our application was in before they stopped.
That's right.
So I think the only question I'd have is whether or not a change in location would in fact impact our eligibility. I don't think it does.
It won't.
Okay,
I was
thank you.
talking
Thank you.
to, I forgot
Neil?
his name.
Neil?
Neil, thank you. Neil McKenzie. Yeah, yeah, it won't.
Right, so we got in under the wire.
Just in
So there's, and we're not the only ones. I think there might be 4 or 5 that, and so they'll be considered under the old COMFIT program still. I mean, I expect not forever, so we can't sit on our laurels. Like, we can't just, I suspect there will be a time where we either have to act on that application or not, right?
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Muse.
Looking at the summary where it says accumulated surplus, beginning of year, where, we have this much money in surpluses, 3 million in one, and where's those figures? We have that much money?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that, yeah.
So the operating, so every year we have been putting money aside, as you know. The federal gas tax is restricted,
Yeah.
right? So that's at 816,000. So that it can only be used on certain projects. The capital reserve at the end of last year was approximately 3 million. When you take a look at what was in the bank and what was owing to the capital reserve based on previous projects that it funded, it's about 3. So that's the first time it breached that mark. So it's quite healthy. And then the operating reserve is at 2 million, although we do have quite a bit of plans around that, particularly on some investments on in the Industrial Commission, through the Industrial
Okay.
Commission.
Yeah, I guess, I think that question was answered, but, you know, I know the COMFIT, if there's a timeline that if we don't do it before a certain time, whether or not we're gonna lose it, that was my question. I think you might have answered that anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't say for sure whether there's a deadline, but
Yeah.
our application was definitely before they closed that program.
Yeah, okay.
I can maybe add on to that, if you wouldn't mind. Talking to Neil McKenzie, there's like a 2-year. We have a
Okay.
2-year on that,
Oh.
deadline on it. Yeah.
Has to be done within.
From the time the application COMFIT was approved. I was at the meeting, and that's what he told us.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor LeBlanc.
From what I'm gathering from this document, is essentially it's not anything we didn't know. It's just everything prioritized together, and if I understand correctly, you just have to submit this to the province for their approval. Is that correct?
It requires your approval, and then what they do is if they take it and they analyze it, and if they see any problems, they come back.
Such as?
Such as if we said that we could build an administration building and get 100% gas tax support for that.
Oh,
They'd say,
okay.
no, wait a minute, no, that's not eligible, so you can't do that. So they look through to make sure that what we say we're getting the money from is actually doable.
Yeah.
And they also look for, are you spending 15 million and you've got 2, right? So, I mean, that's obviously an extreme example, but they do look at that.
This is pretty straightforward. I mean, it's all projects we knew we were doing. We knew what they cost. It's just thrown on a chart together. Essentially, is all it is. So.
Agreed. So from my perspective, I agree 100%. But from my perspective, you know, if council wants to add, like if they are seeing something that's coming and that they want to advocate for a project that will be coming now or into the future, we do this at least once a year to provide that opportunity. Now, we've done that in other meetings where we've brought that up in other meetings. We don't have to do it here and now.
On that note is what I was getting at. There's been serious talks in Wedgeport about we have a trail system that's been managed by the museum, the Wedgeport Tuna Museum, and basically Wedgeport is a point, of course. The trail system follows the shoreline throughout the point. There is this one spot where you can't make the connection. The trail runs around the point And for about a kilometer stretch, it's sort of a dead end and you have to go back around, but if that connection could be made, the trail could be like a loop, like you could return to point A from a different angle. So a lot of community interest in that, volunteers, maybe people possibly looking to, what can the municipality do to help? So I was asked to raise it. I've attached it to, I think, our September agenda for council. Just curious if that is relevant to this document. It's sort of a low-key project. I wouldn't assume it would be high funding. I just want your thoughts before I approve this.
Well, from my perspective, you could certainly ask council to consider adding it now. The problem is that we don't really know what the investment, the amount will be.
Certainly.
But you could easily, flag it, and we can talk about it in September. This is another option. And then next year at this time, when we're talking CIP, capital investment plan, it would be something that had the support of a motion during the year, and then so it would get added,
Okay.
right?
So if we wanted, let's say maybe to start early summer of next year, this, by adding it to the September council meeting would not hamper that. It would be added to the 5-year plan.
Right.
This time, 1 year from now.
Yes.
Okay, I'm completely fine
I think
with
I think that can happen,
Yeah.
because we've done that. We've done that in the past where,
Yep.
projects do crop up. You don't look at this once a year, you look at
Yeah.
it through the year, so.
Well, that being the case, I will make the motion. A great document. Obviously, you've crossed your Ts and dotted your Is. I'll make the motion to approve the capital investment plan as presented.
Second?
Okay, so it's been a motion on the floor to approve the CIP. It's been moved and seconded. Any more discussion? Having heard none, go ahead, CMU.
If I could just flag one thing. With the last minute change on the federal gas tax for the municipal building, what you might notice is that in the column for federal gas tax, estimated surplus end of year after 5 years, it's gonna be approximately $1.4 million. So we don't have to do it now, but what I'm going to suggest is that we should be, that money is to be invested. It's not to be saved, right? So there are other eligibility criteria, such as, there are other projects here that might attract gas tax. The one that I am very confident would is the artificial surface of the track and field, because the recreation infrastructure was added as an eligibility criteria in the new agreement. And so depending on, how strongly you feel about these projects, the question we should be asking as a group is, how much of these projects could in fact occur if we could allocate gas tax to it instead, right? So it's just something to think about. I'm flagging it because I think that that's a lot of money to not be spent at the end of year 5, right? We should be spending that money on projects, and so we should try. Again, this is a new development, right? Because we did have it allocated to another project. So, I guess from my perspective, I just want to flag that for this group so that you're thinking about how we're going to utilize that money. And I'm happy to provide you with a report on that, but it's not necessary to approve this document.
to take home.
Yeah,
Mull over.
agreed.
Councillor Surratt.
I would just wonder, why wouldn't we be putting that on the Westport wastewater? At 700,000, since we're not using it for the, which is a much more needed project, as far as I'm concerned, than the track and field, but that's my opinion, obviously. But I think where we've always been grumbling, there's no money in the pot, and the Westport is such a huge project and so much money. Why couldn't we just put that amount of money in that project?
We absolutely could.
Yeah.
And so the way that project is showing right now
Yes.
is we have pretty good information from Richemont right now.
Okay.
It costs about $15,000 to put an individual septic system on a property. And so what their concept was that they would do 2/3. They would treat the project very similarly to how we get money for our own projects. So we would, so Richemont, what Richemont's done is allowed for gas tax to pay for 2/3 of that investment. So Guy Surette has a septic system in Wedgeport that's failed. He needs to replace it. There would be a program upon which you would pay $5,000, and then the other $10,000 would be supported by this project, which would be no different than having a centralized sewer system, right? Because most centralized sewer systems have 2/3 funding. That's the plan. So it's pre-planned, right?
No, of course, I
The
agree.
logistics are still hard to figure out because there has to be an implementation system. At first, it would obviously be voluntary for those who want a new system.
Yeah.
But after that, the problematic areas
Which,
will eventually have to be forced to change because they're the problematic areas.
that's right, and
So, we're still, or at least, we're still conversing about that.
so maybe I might be jumping the gun too quick here by putting this, so-
The reality of the situation is what that project is it estimates 50 replacements. So what would happen is if you did 60 replacements, your gas tax would increase.
Right.
So what is likely to happen in that project is if we phased it, it's probably going to be, at the end of the day, more than 50 that need to be replaced.
Right.
So in all reality is that once we know that, those numbers will change, and that number will probably jack up.
Jack
And
up,
so,
yeah.
and so what we did, if you recall, and when we did the Building Canada Fund applications, we decided not to apply for the Building Canada Fund support at that time. And with the objective to get maybe phase one done with gas tax.
That's right.
And if we started it, and if the program was already going, when phase two BCF comes in, we can apply for the 2/3 to come from Building Canada, not from us.
right,
But the project is good to go, right? So the biggest problem we've always had with Wedgeport is that it wasn't shovel-ready.
wasn't shovel-ready,
And so if we
absolutely.
did a pilot program or a smaller program, it would be shovel-ready. So when we applied, we would know exactly how it would work. It would
get you.
make the project very attractive
I get you.
for financial support. So that's how, that was how
Thank
we
you
were
very
thinking
much, yeah,
about it.
okay. Thank you for that info.
Okay, Councillor Muse?
Looking at the 200,000 for the building, but what you said earlier was that it's not eligible for new building, but it could be eligible for a retrofit.
That's
which
correct.
we don't know what we're going to do,
Correct.
whether we're going to do retrofit or not, right? So I would say that maybe that should stay there. I mean, we can always move that whenever. It doesn't have to be moved now.
Agreed.
And at least that if we were going to do a retrofit, because it's cheaper, then that money would be earmarked for that.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that would be my view on that at this point.
Yeah. From the administrative perspective, I agree. I think that I think we have to assume, I don't think we can assume a large gas tax investment there, like where we used to have it at
Right.
700. Like, that's not gonna happen.
No.
Right? So, but
No.
we should plan for at least some to offset. Yeah.
Exactly.
I agree, and I don't know if 200 is the right number, but we're guessing now.
Well,
And
yeah.
This is a budget, it's not a for real. right?
So as long as the money is earmarked for something, then you're saying we gotta spend that money, but that's the same as having it spent if it's earmarked for, how does that work? Like,
Well-
if we don't do the building, you know,
We're not forced to spend it the way that we say we're going to spend it.
no,
What we're forced to do is spend it only on eligible criteria.
that's right.
And so what happens is we tell them how we're gonna spend it, they tell us whether or not they think that's appropriate. And then when it actually happens, like, there's other reports that we have to do in order to show them what we did with the money, including an audit, like, they internally audit what we do every year. So essentially, what we plan is one thing. They tell us if that looks good, but we don't necessarily have to do it exactly the way that we planned.
Okay.
And this is certainly subject to change based on changing environments.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, Councillor Surratt again.
Just one more question. On that track and field, if that is kind of basically, there is money available there, we could be losing some money on that track and field, let's say if we were all interested. If we don't go in that route, that money that is available for track and field, then we could basically, not get it down the road. But it could be ready there now if we had some gas tax money to put in there.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the track and field project, it's been tricky all along. Like, we had a pretty good funding to set it up the way that it is now.
Right,
We had an opportunity, if you remember, to get 50-cent funding from a co-op
Yes.
2 years ago, and we
Yeah.
said, look, we can't fund the other half, it was too expensive.
Yeah.
So at that point, we didn't have gas tax option.
Yes.
And so, you know, under this plan, what we're hopeful for is to get municipal funding. Our partners would help us because this would be the regional track and field.
Yep.
And we would get provincial and federal funding, right? So we were hoping for ACOA and the province to invest in this particular asset, right? Province might still be able to invest in the asset, but I don't think they'd do it alone. So
Yes.
if we came in with gas tax, they might be interested. So it, you know, the project can be executed in a number of different ways.
Okay.
What we've planned up to this point and what this capital investment plan says is that we're not using gas tax on this project at this time. And I don't expect that we're gonna have an option to fund it in the next 12 months.
Okay.
So it's probably good the way that it is now, unless we wanted to aggressively pursue
Yeah.
that project versus another.
Okay.
At this point, this is how it's being shown. I merely suggested that that particular project was one that didn't show gas tax, that could in fact be supported by gas tax if you wanted it to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. You've all heard it. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Okay. We shall move on to 3B, which is private roads with an attachment of 3 pages. CMUs, I think this one's yours too?
Yes, this one you've had a while. What we want from council is direction. So this started with a request to take over a road. And so what this request for decision ultimately is attempting to do is to take that request and pull it out maybe 10,000 feet and say, all right, you know, what's your intentions around private roads? Generally, right? So what we struggle with as administrative staff is that depending on what your intentions are, our response to the request would be substantially different. Clearly, there is no, the MGA doesn't in fact allow us to take over private roads unless they meet a certain standard. So that is even, it's not even a debate. It's out of the question. So really the question is whether or not you're interested to consider taking over roads if they meet that grade, or not, right? And so the fact that you might be interested doesn't force you to take over every road. You can make that decision on a case-by-case basis. I think if you, and this might have been a later addition around the example of the county of Antigonish, shows the documentation around, shows how they deal with it. So the wording in their subdivision bylaw is quite particular. They say, this is what we're looking for in terms of standards, and this does not guarantee that we will take it over, right? And so they're actually forcing people, anyone that's doing a private road, they're forcing people to meet that standard, okay? So there's, this is a bit of a complex situation. So right now, Argyle has no standard for private roads, you know that. And what we say in our plan is, we're not going to deliver services on K roads or private roads because we don't own them, right? So garbage, et cetera, not gonna happen. You know, we're not plowing it, we're not doing any of that if it's private. So that was established years ago in our planning strategy. So I guess, but our planning strategy is very clear about is very clear about how they would consider taking over K roads, which are provincial roads that are not maintained by the province anymore, but it's very unclear around what we would do on a private road ownership request. So that's the guidance that we're looking for. And so, you know, the report is a little high level around the costs of maintenance of roads. When you take over a road, I mean, you can imagine that you take over the responsibilities of that road. And And so you know, from a developer's standpoint, that's very advantageous, because they can assure people that there's going to be an ongoing support maintenance of that road if we own it. From our perspective, we have to, you know, manage what our coffers can afford and what we're prepared to do around development specifically. So that's really high level, and we don't really make a recommendation here. We're asking you to consider two options, and we're trying to explain to you how either one of those options would unfold. In both cases, there would be policy change, right? One would be very specific, nope, and the other one would be, okay, this is under the conditions upon which we would consider it, right? So I think that's about all. You've had the chance to read the request for decision. There is, Kathy gave her regrets, but did provide a response that I believe you have in writing in front of you. Of course, she was particularly interested because the request to take over the road is in her district. And so this decision would could impact that request. Okay?
Okay, Councillor LeBlanc.
Sort of subject is kind of new to me. I'm kind of perplexed what the correct thing to do here is. First off, I'd like to know a little history. Who created this road? What was the intention for the creation of these roads? And why would there be further expectations that a municipal unit would want to be taking them over? I just look at this, I don't know the history, I really don't, but I just can't presume you can make roads anywhere willy-nilly and then hope that the municipality wants to take them over.
Right. In this particular, it's a great question. In this particular situation on the Montague request, this is based on discussions with the current owner. That road was constructed in the early to mid-90s. So when it was constructed, the province of Nova Scotia was still taking over roads. So they were, you know, if you constructed roads to a certain standard, the province would take it over. So from our perspective, what happened was, you know, they may have been given assurances from the province. I use may because I you know, we don't know for sure. But the timing suggests strongly that was constructed, and then the rules changed. So like the province stopped taking over roads. So then the only other option that they had in order to have somebody take it over was the municipality. And so, you know, that road is constructed it's constructed quite well. I mean, it's not poorly constructed, but whether it meets the design requirements, I can't know that because they have not provided us with that information. They say that it was engineer design to the specs of DOT, Department of Transportation at the time, but there's no evidence. There's no hard evidence to say yes.
Right.
So they'll have to provide that evidence. So from our perspective, I think from their perspective, I think they feel a little miffed because they had the impression that maybe that would be taken over, and of course that would, you know, make it more attractive, and services would then be provided on public roads, and they'd be plowed by the province, you know, all these nice things that would happen, right? So none of that happened. So the development as it stands right now isn't finished. The road like ends, but the subdivision can continue. Like the land ownership on the part of the developer continues and is not roaded, for lack of a better word. So in essence, you know, what is being asked of us is to take over a road that really hasn't been completed. If that's one way to look at it. So we have no obligation to take it over. No obligation. The question is whether council feels that it's something that the community will benefit from.
I feel evidently it would be terrible to have that issue, being a proprietor on that road. I just can't help but feel this is a provincial issue. If the province ceased taking over these roads, I'm sure it was tried. It's just, you know, I would take it up with a provincial representative. I just feel like if we took over a road, it would open up doors for a world of hurt on other roads and different areas. But like I said, this is very new to me, and I'm not quite sure what the right thing to do is. I'd like to hear, actually, to tell you the truth, from the counselor in that district, what her thoughts are. That's all.
All right, that letter was, did we receive that? I don't remember
I
seeing it.
haven't seen the letter, at least not in the last email, or was it way before?
You mean the letter from?
Kathy?
Oh, this is an email received yesterday, right? So I think you might have it in. Oh, they don't?
No, I don't have it.
Okay, so here are my thoughts. This is Councillor Cathy. In taking this road, it would encourage future development. Our municipality is always looking for a growing future. Our municipality needs to open up to our own citizens for growth and progress for advancement in our community. This will encourage citizens to stay in our local area. If this road meets required standards, I agree to take over the road to proceed full services to our taxpayers. Now that's in response to the request of the Montague Road. What you're facing in front of you is the decision as to whether or not you would even consider any request, right? So from our perspective, we needed to understand what your position was around, like some municipalities take the position, absolutely no road takeovers, period, right? And that has been done. Municipality of Digby, for example, is one. Municipality of Yarmouth and the municipality of Antigonish, for example, take a different approach. They have set a standard for road, for private road construction, and they will consider taking it over based on certain conditions, but they're not forced to take over anything. And so, anyway, so our position now is there is no expectation of construction for private roads. You can construct a private road any way you want in the municipality of Argyle, providing that you meet like the provincial subdivision regulations and the provincial regulations. So, but there's no standard, right? So you don't have to create a standard, but if you're considering the takeover of roads, you would have to consider creating a standard to take over the road, right? So that's, it's a tough decision because there's a lot of uncertainty around that. And quite frankly, I couldn't tell you with certainty how many private roads right now are currently out there that would meet the Department of Transportation construction standard. There might be 0, there might be 2, there might be 12, right? I know that a lot of the private roads would not meet the standard because a lot of them actually became private roads, whereas they started as driveways.
That's right.
Right, so there might have been a driveway in the woods that turned into 5 or 6 people on a driveway, and then it became a public road in essence. Right? They gave it a name, and it's considered a private road because it's privately owned.
So, okay, so you said that the developer said that it met the criteria for the province, but if it was engineered, wouldn't they have a engineered report when they built that road? And why, if they do have one, why don't we have it?
I can't answer that question. I don't know. I mean, we've requested it and we've received a subdivision plan, but we have not received an engineer stamped design. So I don't know whether it means that it was done and lost. I can't say. We have sent correspondence to the developer requesting any such information, like we've done that in writing. So anyway, so that's.
Yeah, I mean, I just find it kind of funny that, the residents on the road who bought lots and built houses, or bought lots from the developer, they're the ones who approached us, but, you would think that they would be working together to try to achieve what they're trying to achieve. But to me, it seems like there's, kind of two groups there. Am I wrong, or am I right?
We have communicated with both groups. I think that it started with the residents. It started with the residents wanting certain services on their road. I think they cited three services in particular. One was plowing, the other was garbage collection, and the
School
third
bus.
was busing, right?
Yeah.
And so we've established that busing is a problem regardless of whether we own it or not. And that garbage, if it was publicly owned, we could provide a service there, providing that there would be substantial improvements, i.e. cul-de-sac, a way for someone to take a truck down and turn around. So safety requirements there'd have to be changes made to the existing road. And the third was snow plowing, which we would only do if we took it over. We can't, by policy, we cannot actually do it unless we took it over.
Okay.
So, and of course, the developer is interested because it makes the future development more
More
attractive.
attractive, yeah. Councillor Surratt?
I guess from my perspective, I'm looking at, I guess the question really is it's not only this particular road, but it's like the CEO has said, it's any road that people would want to, what's our policy down the road on any roads that people want to meet, whether it's a driveway or something somebody's done, and I think that's not only this particular people and, or this particular road. We have to, certainly have our minds wrapped around what the expense would be, what our liability would be. There are certain standards that have to be met. In my perspective, we may be opening again the floodgates. I've got 2 roads in my district that people have approached me on, and they've been reading online about this, and do they meet the standards or don't they? Well, I guess staff would have to look at it and determine that. Create quite a bit of work, whether they do or not, whether it does or not. So I think that my mind is only 2 places. With all the districts we have, it certainly would open the floodgates. I'm certainly looking at what implications it'll involve the municipality liability again, and the huge cost and the many hours that staff will have to put into this. And I can't see it being viable in pursuing this myself. I think we should leave it alone and possibly look at it on the standards as set by the Department of Highways. I think our CEO said there's number one, go with that standard, and if they can't produce a paper that they're to that standard, well, let's look at it a case-on-case basis. And that would be the number one criteria. Did they meet that standard, number one, before we go any further? And I think it's in the MGA, is it? That it has to be set. So there's our first standard. It has to meet that standard set by the Department of Transportation.
Yeah, there needs to be a standard set if the municipalities are in the business of taking over private roads. So the first question is that something that generally council should consider, is the first question that you're faced with. And, the second question is, if the answer to that is no, then we're really done, right? So basically what our policy would then reflect is that regardless of the quality of the road, we would not take it over, period. Okay, so that has its pros and cons, right? Yes, from council's perspective, we wouldn't have any additional expenses around those roads.
Or liability.
Or liability.
Or liability, yeah.
Right, so it's, and, but on the flip side, are we, the developer might argue that we're restricting development in some way because we're not considering taking over a perfectly fine road, right? Keeping in mind, it has to be a perfectly fine road, right? So if the answer is yes, so no, and that's pretty clear, right? If the answer is yes, then it's, okay, here's the standard, right? So would council force people to meet that standard regardless? That seems contrary to what we've done in other planning documents. We've been fairly laissez-faire around that. We don't have too many rules and regulations. The red tape is a little thinner in Argyle. So that would be a little contrary to what we've done in the past. That being said, you don't have to set the standard for all private roads. You can set a standard for the roads that you would consider taking over. Now, it doesn't mean that you would, right? It means that you would consider it only if, right? And so there might be a variety of factors why you might say yes to one and no to another. And so by saying yes, it doesn't mean that you're taking over roads. It means you're considering taking over roads, and that your land use bylaw will reflect that, and that your planning strategy will reflect that, okay? Now, if you say yes, whatever you say actually will require an MPS amendment.
Yeah.
And the good news is that the municipal planning strategy, anytime it's amended, requires public participation.
Yeah.
It requires public input both before and after it gets implemented, even if the answer is no, because you're actually changing what your policy is around land use. So it might be a good way to test what the community would say. You know, by doing public participation, you're getting their input at the front, before you're actually presenting it for recommendation. So then what you're basically going to be doing is asking the Planning Advisory Committee to lead you through that process, if the answer was yes or
How many
no.
requests have you had?
For takeover of
Last 5
roads,
years, like say, since you've been here, have you had, that you remember?
one.
One, okay, yeah.
I know there might have been another one that didn't come to administration. It may have gone to council and not necessarily formally discussed. Like, I know that there might be, like, you know, there's always somebody that says, well, wouldn't it be nice if the municipality takes over our road? Well, that's not really a request, that's a conversation, right?
Yeah.
An official request, there's been one, and it's this one, Montague Road.
But I can say that in my district, I've had people approach me as a certain road that,
Yeah.
they asked me the question, right?
Yes.
And I think we maybe discussed it just among me and you.
Right.
And then figured out that, you know, they weren't nowhere close to the criteria of the road, right?
Right.
And then it kind of got dismissed.
Right.
But and I'm sure probably everybody in their district had somebody approach them and talk about this, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Councillor Muse.
That road, if it was built, I can go back, like when I was working with the department and we were taking over roads. If a road was gonna be taken over, we, as a department, would have to be there while it was being constructed to inspect, to make sure that it was built to what we said it should have been built.
That's
The amount of,
interesting.
and what that was to make sure that there was the right amount of gravels,
Yep.
right? You need 6 inches of one class and 4 inches of another and whatever. And that was part of to make sure that was built the way, and we didn't, there wasn't that many requests either, right? A lot of the requests at that time came from K-roads that they wanted maintained,
Yeah.
okay? But for taking over, we didn't have a whole lot of requests. Now, there was requests, and one of the requests that I can remember is where you live. That road is now part of the highway system, right? Right to where there's a house at the end, LeBlanc, okay? That's when we took over that, but I was there when they built it as a surveyor, right?
I'm confused which road.
Well, down, oh, maybe it's not your road. It's where, what's his name, LeBlanc built a house on
Cape
the
Wharf.
shore.
Off Cape
Cape
Wharf.
Wharf.
It's off Cape Wharf.
Oh, yes,
Left
sorry,
on Cape
sorry,
Wharf.
it's not your road, no,
Oh,
no.
that little Woodrow Road there, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
Woodrow Road.
Yeah.
Woodrow Road, we extended that because it used to end and we took it over, right? But it was constructed at the time to that standard and we were there. If this road here, this particular road, Montague, if it was built to standard, if the highways was intending to take it over, there should be records if they were there while he was building it. If they weren't there, that's probably one of the reasons it wasn't taken over by the department, or they missed the deadline. I don't know when it changed. I don't think we would, unless there was some kind of papers saying that this was built to that standard, and if we weren't there, then I don't think they would have taken it over. So chances are all the roads around here now that our private roads are probably not built to standard. So that kind of falls into ours where we can say no to these, because there's no way that most of those roads are built to standard, right? So with the
Absolutely.
MGA, it says that they have to be?
It doesn't say that it has to meet that standard.
No.
It says that in
A
order for us
standard.
to take over or to be in the position to take over.
We would have our own standards if we
Correct.
wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay,
There'd have to be, there
okay.
has to be a standard. I'm gonna find the wording. It's John Sullivan that had pointed that out to me. It's absolute, and really, even if it didn't say it in the MGA, it would be absolutely imprudent of council to even consider it. You can't. It's just like, I mean, I'm saying the MGA tells you you can't. Even if it didn't, you shouldn't. I'm strongly recommending that you don't do that because you're just asking for trouble.
Put some
Right.
kind of standards that satisfies
Yeah,
Council,
what we think it should be,
Right.
whether it's highway standard or whatever.
right. It can be a lesser standard.
Yes, okay.
it
Okay,
can
that's
be.
not what I had understood. I thought it
I
had
thought it
to
was
be.
MGA too.
It doesn't specify it has to be Department of Transportation standards. And I mean, there's a national booklet on road
Okay.
standard construction. You're probably more aware of it than I am, but like there is documentation that suggests, okay, here's the norm, right?
Yeah.
Here's what it should look like.
Yeah.
And it depends on how much traffic there is, whether it's a street, a lane, like there's a bunch, I mean, it's quite complex, certainly not my expertise, but from the perspective of standards. So from our perspective, like, we would want to follow the standard that most municipalities follow, because that's based on sound practice, right? And most of them do use,
Yes, highway standard.
right,
Right.
Right.
Because it's a good standard, you know,
Right.
they're made to last.
Right.
So this particular road here, the residents came forward because of some of the services that they're not getting. However, there's some of the services, even if we do, that they're not gonna get, right?
correct,
The school buses are not gonna go.
correct.
They're getting plowed now. Who plows it? Themselves, or is it
The
the
developer.
contract, the developer,
Yep.
right? So it's in his best interest for someone to take it over so he doesn't have to do that, right? So as far as services, they're getting some of the services that they would get anyway, right? It's just from different
Yeah,
sources,
They're not
right?
getting garbage service.
They're not getting garbage, but in order to do that, we would have to spend some money to make a turnaround. Plus, is there development beyond where the road is constructed now? Like, or just?
They own,
They own. Okay,
Yes.
okay.
so the potential to develop beyond the
Okay,
road.
there's nothing beyond where the road, I thought maybe there was.
I don't
like,
think
the
so. I
road-
mean, there might be a driveway that's close, but I
Okay.
don't believe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know, I think, my view is that we might be setting ourselves up, by applying for that now, by accepting that. Now, you said we have to make a decision of some kind at some point, whether it's a yes or a no.
Yes.
Or do we leave things as they are? If we go with yes or no, you said regardless, we're gonna have to go to the public anyway.
That's right.
So.
Because we're
so
changing the MPS.
We're changing. So unless we leave it the way it is, we're gonna have to go to the public anyway. And that would give us kind of an idea as well, direction from
Mhm.
public, on what the public feels.
You raise an important point. The third option is to do nothing, because the MPS is unclear as to what your position would be on
Right.
private roads. So you could, in theory, do nothing and consider owning this, but you would have to insist on a certain standard, and you have not in any way, shape, or form
No,
established
no.
that standard. So you'd be applying a standard based on what, right?
Yeah.
I think in theory, you could do that. You could insist upon a certain standard by resolution. You wouldn't have to change your MPS, I don't think. That one might need Real's advice. But clearly the best way is to be very clear about what your intentions are, which would involve an amendment,
Mhm.
one way or another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's what I have.
Councilor Surratt.
I wonder if we could get our solicitor to give us some advice on a few things, maybe at our next meeting, possibly, and bring this back up. I was almost ready to make a decision, I guess to vote no, but now after Danny spoke, Councillor Muse, and thinking now about the solicitor, maybe I'd rather maybe listen to, see what he has to say about how we proceed. That's my opinion right now, I guess, at the moment.
I was looking at the cost and budget consideration, so I guess it's hard to tell exactly how much it would cost us a year, depending on the length and how many houses and all that, right?
Agreed.
But, you know, approximate range, I guess is, maintenance costs are as follows: 4,500 to 8,000, depending on severity of the winter, length and condition of the road. And I guess thinking about the letter or the email that Councillor Kathy Book wrote about, encouraging development, I guess if there was, new development, new houses, of course, we would, as a tax collector, we would collect, money back. So, I guess, what would be the point where, we actually be making money, if we, took over a road and encouraged, people to build houses or,
Right.
sell lots, right?
Right. That's.
I mean, on that road, for example, there's already probably, 12 or 15 houses, right? So,
It's 12.
The road doesn't meet the standard, though.
well, we don't know that yet.
Right.
It hasn't provided a copy.
Yeah.
I think it's quite clear, there's homework to do here a little bit more.
Yeah.
And
Here.
then we'll rebring it back to the city.
I think Councillor Brooke would appreciate that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do think so. That's
But,
what-
the one point that Councillor Muse raises is that, there might be a reason why the property owners don't have a copy of that is because it might be at the province. It might be the Department of Transportation, right?
Not sure.
So I think, we could ask the question, and maybe the answer is in somebody's filing cabinet,
Never know.
What you're looking at a few years ago.
Yeah.
That I'm not sure, what records there would be on something like that at this point.
All right. So how do we proceed? There was, suggested option to consider yes and no's. But if we go with yes or no, then that will, in fact, trigger, some public consultation. Are we not ready for that yet? We talked about talking to the solicitor. We've been talking about, talking back to, with Councillor Book. So how do we proceed?
I would like to make a motion that we bring the solicitor in our next meeting and that we get some advice from him. And at that point, it would bring staff to look at maybe what the Department of Highways has in their files somewhere possibly. And I don't think that I'm not ready to make a decision on this until we get further information. So I'd like to make a motion that we get our solicitor involved, staff involved, to bring more information. Then we'll have Councillor Book here at our next meeting to be here to talk to. She'll be here face to face, hopefully. That's a motion I'd like to make.
Motion on the floor? Anybody care to second that motion? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Any more discussion? Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Okay. All right. We'll move on to 3C. Réseau des villes francophones, francophiles d'Amérique, inaugural event and Nova Scotia Heritage Conference attendance.
So this,
So we are invited to the inaugural event of the francophone and francophile cities network to be held October 29th to 31st, 2015 in Quebec City. So they're inviting, I'm assuming that they would want somebody from the municipality, the warden, or staff person, or what would that be, the warden? Okay,
Wasn't this brought up at another meeting?
It was, yeah.
Oh,
So,
that's what I thought.
go ahead, Chris.
To participate in it was brought up, but to attend the actual inaugural event was not.
Thank you.
And they strongly suggest that you attend, but it's not necessary from what they told us.
Thank you.
So what do we know about the costs, Chris?
The cost would be to cover the travel and the meals, the accommodations, and the registration of the event are covered.
For the ward.
Or his other member. It can be the warden or another
Should go
member.
More than one, from what I read.
Correct.
However,
You
you
would-
would have to absorb the cost.
That's
of
correct.
the whole thing.
So the cost to get there, essentially, is that what it is?
For the other member, you'd have to pay for everything.
Right,
For the warden or his other or another member in his replacement,
Yeah.
it would only be travel and meals
right.
per our policy.
So accommodations
And registration are covered.
are covered.
Correct. And any meals during the event would be covered as well.
Right. So approximate cost of flight is
Yeah, to-
probably 300 return.
Yeah.
yeah, Quebec City, it's
Yeah.
not,
You know, it's probably that, you know, maybe it'll give or take, right?
yeah,
Depending on,
yeah,
and depending on whether you approved mileage for that, that would be additional costs, but that would be the extent of it. So, you know, ballpark be what, 500 maybe? Maybe 6.
okay.
So, I know the warden, you know, was actually kind of pleased that he wasn't here, because he didn't really wanna, like, I think it's something that he feels that could be interesting, and wanted for council to discuss and debate,
Okay,
right?
right, Councillor Surratt.
I'd just like to say that with the money that's involved and what my feeling looking at this we'll get out of it, I think it's best that we keep our money in our coffers and like I say, it's not from what I see, a high priority item, in my opinion, and I think, you know, we have enough expenses around our own area that, hey, I don't think we should be going to this. I think it's probably a good thing, but I don't feel it's a high priority on my radar.
I agree.
Okay. Anybody else care to weigh in on the? Councillor Albright.
I don't know if I agree 100% with that. Just because I feel like we're really trying to build our tourism industry. And I have a daughter who works as a tour guide, and she is quite surprised at how many people from Quebec stop in and don't even realize that there are French opportunities in this area. So I see it as a way, for $500, it's a possible way for our warden to go there and, you know, to give his input and let him know that we do have some French-speaking people here and opportunities for tourism here as well. That's how I feel.
Okay. Anybody else care to weigh in on this?
Just as a point, if council feels like this is a tourism opportunity, and I would suggest that the warden felt the same, because he saw it as a tourism opportunity, you know, perhaps one of the things we should be asking is for YASTA to financially support the trip for the warden. That way, the money stays, you know, primarily in your coffers, as Guy's words would be.
Yeah.
And that you actually have the region who is supposed to promote the region. It includes our region, and so that might be a way to achieve both of your goals. You don't know the answer to an unasked question, I guess.
Yeah,
Very much.
yeah,
Such a great suggestion.
yeah.
So that's another option that I'm,
What's the date that they have to?
It's,
21st?
October 29th.
By October 15th. So there's time.
yeah, yeah.
There's time to make that decision.
Mhm.
Our September
Mhm.
meeting. whatever. Well, I can make a motion that we approach.
YASTA to see if they're willing to pay for travel based on the fact that it could be tourism related, and see if they would come up with paying, even if they paid half or whatever, but to see if they would cover the cost.
Okay, been moved and seconded. I'm wondering if, not just approach Yasta. I mean, you've got, the fund, you've got, you've got different organizations, that are for the promotional of tourism and the French culture, the, language, Acadian affairs. We might be able to partner
That's great.
in order to,
Exactly.
so I'm just, kind of throwing that out, But we do have a motion on the floor. Councillor Surratt.
I can't support the motion if it says, because I'm not clear, if you could clarify it a bit, you said the amount or half the amount?
I would feel that if they're willing to increase some, that they may expect us to pay
For
some
some
as
of it.
well. And to me, if we can get some of the funding,
I would go along with that, you know what I
I
mean?
get what you're saying, I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't support that unless they pay the full amount, that's my views. Yeah.
Okay, so the motion, I guess if we go back through, the motion would read that we approach Yasta to partner with us in the funding,
That's-
or?
Or to ask for the funding,
Okay, ask for the funding, yeah.
yes.
Okay, so if we moved and seconded, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary?
Nay.
So we have a tie,
So,
and it goes to the chair, and the chairman can break the tie.
Well, the chairman should technically vote on the question.
and actually go.
Yeah, and my, yeah.
So
And
maybe
my-
you wanna start again.
Okay. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary?
Nay, nay,
So, 3 votes to 2, motion carried.
So the request, I just wanna be clear, like I understood
the full amount.
the full amount was in your motion.
The full amount is in our motion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but my feeling would be that it would come back here if it's, and then we vote on it to say that they're willing to give 250 of the 500, do we go with it or not?
Right, if they accept your request,
Yes.
it's over, right?
Right.
If they say we'll do this, then it has to come
Has
back,
to come back.
because
Yeah.
you haven't approved any of your own
No.
funds.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's why I wanted to clarify
Yeah.
that, because,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, because your
I
name,
know, you're getting me, you're reading me, I know.
you know, I was
Yeah.
like, wasn't
Thank you
sure.
on that.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean that if they say half, that he goes and we take it.
That's right, that's right.
no, you haven't
It
committed to
comes
done.
back to council and,
Back to council.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now, was there 2 parts in that? There's also the Nova Scotia Heritage Conference. I'm
Oh, yeah,
trying
there
to,
was
yeah,
some-
that's right. So there's 2 here. So the Nova Scotia Heritage Conference, that was attached to it, the same, it's under the same,
At the end of the,
and the
right.
Nova Scotia Heritage Conference attended. I guess, I thought these were maybe
No, it's different conference.
together. Okay.
So this,
What's the request? What are they-
Digby Pines, October 7th to 9th.
so this request comes from Councillor Murphy. Heritage Conference, so this is, yeah, no, it's not planning, it's heritage, never mind, I almost talked about the wrong thing. So this is a request from Murphy to attend this conference. So this would be, oh shoot, I just lost it.
It's here.
Sorry, there we go. So, I don't know, whether he plans to stay, yeah. you have any more information on?
That's all. He's requesting to attend the conference.
Exploring opportunities.
It's the Nova Scotia Heritage Association that puts it on, and it's more in the line of the courthouse and archives work. And they do not attend the conference, they have not attended the conference before. But that doesn't mean they didn't attend because they didn't think it was worth it, they just never attended. So this year it's hosted by the municipality of Digby. And the agenda deals with more historical topics, and there are 2 field trips that they do attend to go see historical sites and more how they do things in that area.
So who's applied to attend? I'm sorry.
Councilor Murphy.
Oh.
So did Peter and Judy get this information as well?
I mean, I haven't spoken to Peter or Judy directly, but if it's a heritage conference, surely the answer is yes. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Councilor LeBlanc. The light was on, was it from the last one or this one?
Must be, but I don't think this is necessary. I wouldn't approve it.
Okay, Councilor Surratt.
I guess something like this, we have a heritage committee, and not because I'm on it that I'm wanting to go, because I disapprove of this, number one. Right away, I'm totally against going to something like this, but yeah, I would think it would have to be somebody you would think on our heritage committee that should go. I don't know if Councilor Albright is on it. No, I think Kathy is. I think Kathy may be, yes. But anyhow, number one should be somebody on the heritage committee. We have Susan Young, that's the chair, also of that. And number two, I think we're, like they say, we've got grants to organizations, we got, this money is not planned for, and all of a sudden, it seems money's flying out the window here, and we should be more prudent with our money. And I don't think this is necessary either.
Okay. Anybody else care to weigh in? No? Agree? Okay, so do we make a motion to deny? Is that what we do?
That would make it clear, that
Okay.
would make it clear to us.
All right. Anybody care
I'd
to?
like to move that we deny the request for the conference at Digby Pines, October 9th to the 11th.
Okay, Okay.
7th.
been moved and seconded. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Right. Okay, question period. Any questions from the media, the public? Nope. Anybody care to move adjournment? So moved. Second. Okay, good.
Thank you.